Here I am, just a guy sitting in front of an iPhone asking you to watch my latest episode. Hey everyone, Gabe Trujillo here. Welcome to the latest episode of Have a Seat. And today I thought I'd talk a little bit about promposals. With prom season just wrapping up, I thought I'd share my own experience about going to prom. And this goes way back to 2001 during my senior year of high school over here at Mountain Point. It all started at the beginning of the year where I would occasionally cross paths with a girl over there at the high school. For those of you who do know me, know who I'm talking about. For everyone else on the internet, I'll leave that a little bit of mystery. If you want to find out, I'm sure you guys can dig enough, but we'll go ahead and leave her official name out of it for the time being. So I came across this girl. When I first saw her, I knew I wanted to get to know her a little bit more and learn a little bit more about who she was. She was one of the most popular girls in school. She was on the cheerleading team, and I sort of went out of my way to try and find a way to go out and introduce myself to her. So we'd occasionally meet each other on the hallways, passing through from class to class. And as the year went on, we'd sort of meet each other passing by. We'd exchange glances. We would say hello every once in a while. Nothing too serious, just the occasional hello in the hallway. As the year went on, we kept going back and forth, offering our hellos, but nothing really seemed to come of it until later on in the school year. I decided to finally muster up enough courage and ask her to see if she wanted to go hang out and maybe catch a movie sometime. So once I had enough courage, I went up to her one day after school and asked her if she would be interested in going to the movies. You could tell she was a little bit taken aback by my invitation, but unfortunately we weren't able to make it work and go on a date, so I didn't think nothing of it. I just wanted to give it the option and see what would happen. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and that was pretty much that. We still would say hello every once in a while, and we would talk occasionally, nothing too crazy, and we just left it at that. So finally, prom season started to come around, and I didn't really have a date to the prom. I wasn't really planning on going with anybody in particular. I thought I would, since it was going to be my senior year, I would go ahead and just go and hang out with the couple of friends that are going and just have a good time. But one day, probably about a month or two from prom, I was sitting in math class and just minding my own business, going through the lesson, and for 1 minute, my seat was in the front of the class, so I'll frame it that way. So I'm there watching Mr. Ramsire teach his math class, when suddenly he looks up behind me, and in the back of the wall, or in the back of the room, there's a big window up on the top, and he looked up and was looking at it, and he got this weird smirk on his face, and he's like, "Gabe, you might want to turn around." And I didn't think anything of it. I just simply turned around and looked, and when I looked up at the window, there was a message strewn across the windows there, and it said, "Gabe, will you go to prom with me?" At first, I had no idea that they were even mentioning me or why anybody would be sending me a message of it. And it didn't say who it was. There wasn't anybody around. And finally, I turned around, and standing in the door was this girl that I had been saying hello to throughout the whole year. And she was there standing with a rose. And as you can imagine, I was taken aback by what just happened. Never in a million years did I think anybody would reach out and ask me to go to prom. But of course, after everything that we were going back and forth with throughout the year. I, of course, said yes. And I was definitely surprised and elated that out of everybody in the school that she could have gone to prom with, she ended up going with me. So I said yes, and my heart was fluttering like a million miles an hour at that time, but I took the rose, and the rest, as you say, was history. Now, I never really hung out much with other people in high school. I didn't really go to too many house parties or any elaborate social gatherings in school. I was a little afraid about what everybody would think of me or how I would get around hanging around with all those people. So I was kind of a loner, didn't really do much outside of that. So this was my first real opportunity to like hang out with my peers and my friends from school outside of the classroom. So I was really excited about it, but I didn't really know how to act around everyone since I was in a wheelchair and didn't really know how I would fit in with the whole social group there. So for prom, the girl invited me over to dinner at her house with all of her friends who were going with her to prom as well. This was definitely a different experience for me. I hadn't been around anything like this before since I got sick, and so it was gonna be a really big learning experience for me. But I took it in stride and decided to go with it. I got a nice tux put together. I got her a corsage, as is tradition. And from there, I had my dad take me over in our wheelchair van over to her house. And when we got there, she was all dressed up, a beautiful pink dress. And it was definitely a sight to see. I hadn't been around things like this before. And so I had dreamt about hanging around and going to prom with one of the prettiest girls in school, and it was shocking to think that it was actually happening to me, but it was an incredible experience. So I got there for dinner. At this point, I didn't really know what the protocol was as far as having somebody else help me with food or eating or anything like that. So I was really nervous about that. Normally, anyone who was going to be feeding me was either a family member or one of my aides, and so to have somebody outside of that social group helping me with stuff like that was definitely new at that point, and I didn't really know how she would react. But to her credit, she just took it in stride and helped me with anything and everything, and she said that not to be nervous around her, and she'll help me with whatever I needed. So that was fun. It helped alleviate a little bit of the nerves that I knew that she'd be there helping me and not to be afraid of anything. So it was a good dinner. Hung out with her and her friends. After that, we decided to head over to prom that night and go from there. All of her friends ended up going to go in one of those big party buses, and of course, as you can imagine, that party bus wasn't wheelchair accessible. So I thought I was just gonna have to follow along in my van to the event. But my dad, being the guy that he is, he encouraged me to actually just go with the group, and he would drive along in the back and bring the wheelchair to the event. So this was definitely something that I wasn't planning on doing. But my dad was there, and he pushed me to make sure that I was included, and he wanted me to have as much of a experience at prom as I could. So from there, I ended up going with all the people in the party bus. So since my wheelchair didn't fit, my dad went and picked me up, carried me up the steps of the bus and put me in on one of the chairs there inside the bus. And so then I was able to hang out with all the other guys, and my date went and sat next to me and made sure I was comfortable as we drove over to there. And as we were driving, my dad was there right behind us in the van, bringing the chair. And so then once we got to the prom, he then came back with the chair, put me in it, and then we went from there. Long story short, it was a great experience. there's definitely another interesting story to talk about prom for there, but that's for another blog post or another vlog, as it will. I'll share that story a little bit later. But to just see her go through that promposal, I definitely now see what all the hubbub is about as far as promposals, and now they have gotten a lot more elaborate and thought out than my high school days. But it was fun to actually be part of that experience, and a case could be said for my high school year, my senior year in high school, being one of the greatest years of my life, and definitely the highlight of that was my prom night. It's something I'll never forget, and it just showed that even though I was in a wheelchair and my life was changed a little bit by that experience, for a few hours out of a night in high school, I wasn't just another kid in a wheelchair. I was a date for a amazing girl, and who showed me that it had nothing to do with the chair. I was able to be just a normal high school kid for a few hours on an incredible night that I will always remember. So for those of you out there who feel a little bit on the outside, just keep going, because you never know when that person is looking out for you, and your day can change in an instant. So I just thought I'd share that with you guys. It's a nice, fun little story. For those of you who have gone to a prom, go ahead and leave comments of your best nights at your prom, and then we can share some stories in the comments below. Also, for those of you who are planning on going to prom, hopefully this gives you some ideas for maybe a unique promposal that you want to give your date moving forward. Again, thanks for listening. This is Gabe Trujillo from Have a Seat, and until next time, have a good day.